Hello YouTube, today we're going to discuss how to stop being a lazy slob according to Reddit. Now, I was searching for something to make fun of in the realm of Reddit fitness, and I came across an article by a person who apparently has amazing pointers to make you less lazy. So I clicked and I read it, expecting to be able to actually clown the person, but lo and behold, it was actually a great article with a ton of good pointers. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap this article for you, and I'm going to help you in your endeavors to not be so lazy using the information that this person shared. So, the name of the article is Techniques to Consistently Go to the Gym That's Not Just Do It. That's interesting because the just do it argument is something you hear a ton when you ask someone, hey, how do I stop being lazy? The answer is just do it. Why do people say that? Well, one, because they are annoyed with you and they just want you to get out of their face. And two, because it really boils down to that. Just do it. But the issue is that just do it is not sound advice because it gives no methodology. And I've been guilty in the past of doing the same thing because I'm the type of asshole that thinks that if you cannot summon the testicular fortitude to actually get stuff done and improve your life, then why are you wasting my time? I'm not going to be able to save you. You can save someone who doesn't want to be saved. That being said, that attitude is sometimes counterproductive. Sometimes people generally don't have a clue as to how to not be so lazy. They just want methods. Well, this article actually has a ton of it. And it's actually well written too with a ton of logic, which of course I appreciate, but also behavioral psychology. Now, if you want to attract a bear, you use honey. If you want to attract me, you use psychology or philosophy. I cannot resist it. So it was a great surprise because you will find that for the most part, people who are lazy, who are losers, who can't actually be consistent in the gym, it all boils down to their behavior. It's not who they are as a person. No one is a slob as a person. It's not an identity type. But you can become that way if you don't pay attention to your psychology and its mechanisms. So that's mostly what we're going to be doing today. Now, the author greatly insists on the fact that saying just do it is not good advice. And I 100% agree with that. Because the issue is that it presents training like a chore. And the problem with people who try to get into lifting is that they don't have the love for lifting yet in their heart. So they still see it as something they don't really want to do, but that is apparently going to come with just a host of great benefits. So they're trying to force themselves to do it. The issue is that if you do that, if you think like this, it's just going to be another thing in your life that's a pain in the butt, like doing the dishes or doing your taxes. No one likes to do these things. So if you start off with thinking that lifting is going to be like this, and people around you reinforce that by saying, oh, just do it, then it's going to solidify it in your mind that lifting sucks and it's something you have to go through. When at the end of the day, we all know, for the serious lifters on the channel, is that lifting is anything but that. For a lot of us, lifting is the best part of our day. It's not something that we hate. We look forward to lifting when we are at school, at our job. We cannot wait to get to the gym. But the issue is that many people never get to that point because they always see it as something negative. So the just do it, again, doesn't work. Plus, it offers no explanation, right? Just do it is, again, it's a platitude. It sounds nice, and Nike used it as their big slogan because it's like badass, but it's typically the type of thing that you hear and you fall fired up for a second. Then you're like, okay, how do I just do it? And then you're left with nothing because there is nothing, there is no methodology. This article actually offers a solid methodology, one that doesn't rely on willpower. And that's a little bit counterintuitive and maybe a little bit strange in my mouth too because I'm Mr. Willpower. In my opinion, willpower can move mountains. If you want to improve your life, you have to develop willpower. But I also understand that we are not born with it. You're born with will, but your will is not necessarily powerful right off the bat. So telling someone who's just gotten started, who hates the gym and wants to skip all the time to just tough it off and actually just do it doesn't work because they don't have the ability to just do it. So we have to find something that doesn't rely entirely on willpower, something that is going to navigate around it. Because, and it's something that's a little bit more, again, philosophical, willpower is something that you develop. As I just said, it's something that we can all have. There's no such thing as a person that cannot have willpower, but it's a skill, right? Willpower is a skill. And how do you develop a skill? You do it times and times again. But if you start right off the bat with the idea that you have to have that skill maxed out to the top to be able to do it, you're never going to actually do it because it makes no sense. You have to be able to go through a set of action. So if the prerequisite to go through the set of action is the very thing that is supposed to allow you to get those actions done, how are you supposed to do it? If I tell you, hey, just do it, and you're like, how? And I'm like, willpower, and you tell me, but I don't have any, I'm like, well, just do it and then you'll have willpower. Okay, so I'm expecting you to be both at the end goal and at the start at the same time. It's not possible. It's purely stupid and rowdy, but I'm sure we are all guilty of that. We all had that one person that whines all the time, blah, 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 blah. And at some point, we're like, oh, just fucking do it. It's not good advice. It's just that it's an epidermic reaction to a situation that we want to escape. But some people in the world are actually nice and they try to help you like that person. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to reverse the simplification. Because if you again tell people to just have willpower out of nowhere, that's a simplification that doesn't really help them. You have to train the will to train. Again, it sounds stupid, but it's true. Your ability to go into the gym and train the muscles is going to rely entirely on the ability of the mind to get the body to do it. So if you never actually go through that stage, you'll never actually work your muscles. So the number one thing that needs to be developed is the will to power. I read too much Nietzsche. Your willpower, which is essentially sort of close of the same thing, but the only way to develop the willpower is to actually go to the gym. Again, it's the snake that bites its own tail. It is an impossibility. So how do we navigate around that? Because it sounds like we are stuck. Well, the answer is simple. You have to do away with what is called a truism. What is a truism? A truism is just do it. Just do it is a truism. Sounds really nice, but there's not much behind it. These don't work again because they don't offer a methodology. There is no plan of action. When someone asks you for advice, you need to be able to give them sound advice. If someone tells you, how do I cut lemon? And you say, just cut lemons, it's not going to help them much. And it also has a tendency to reinforce what I call the loser formula. The loser formula is a negative cycle that is something that a lot of people are stuck in life in general, outside of lifting, and that means that they never actually get anything done because they hear stuff like just do it, so they jump into it with no methods, thinking, okay, it's going to suck, but I'm going to get through it. They never actually do because a lot of people just give up when something sucks. Now they hate themselves even more because they couldn't actually stick to their words. And then this means that the next time they try to pick it up again, they start with less self-worth, less willpower, and they have a higher chance of losing, of quitting. That's how you create a loser. On the flip side, the winning formula is the opposite. The winning formula is getting into something, sticking to it, seeing results, and that motivates you to do it again for other things in your life. That is how you create a winner. It has nothing to do with genetics. It has everything to do with your environment and how you interact with it. So the question is, all right, how do I get into a winner's cycle? Well, it's very simple. We are going to follow the advice of that person. So the first thing you have to understand is that in order to not be a loser or a slob, you have to stick to things. Because I can tell you one thing, what truly defines a failure in life is the fact that they don't stick to anything. They always give up. Even if you are completely untalented, if you stick to one hobby for 10 years, you will be good. You will be better than 99% of the population, even again if you had no talent or gift for it at the start. This means that a winner never gives up. But that again is a truism. It's very nice to say that, but how do you get there? How do you get to the point where you never actually quit? Well, it's simple. You have to develop consistency. Consistency is number one. You hear a ton of discussion around hard work, working smart, or working consistent. There's a very clear answer to that. It's working consistently. Mathematically speaking, the guy who shows up to the gym every single time he's supposed to is going to beat the guy who trains super hard but not frequently, and is going to beat the guy who's like a super smarty pant but who again doesn't work very hard or doesn't show up to the gym enough. Consistency is your bread and butter. Every single peak physique is built via consistency first and foremost. The issue being that willpower won't get you there at the start. It's the situation I already described. You cannot just have consistency, right? You cannot just wish consistency. You cannot wish willpower. Not because it doesn't work, again, I want to repeat that, but because you don't have any, right? That's sort of the situation and your problem if you're watching this video and you're the person who's lazy and who cannot stick to things. It's not that willpower doesn't work, it's that it doesn't work for you. Willpower works perfectly well for someone like me because I trained it. For you, it's weak, it's like a feeble noodle. The problem is that it's going to remain a noodle until you actually get your ass into the gym. So how do we navigate around your limp noodle? Well, the answer in this situation is going to be, again, to do away with willpower for the time being. Meaning that for the time being, we're going to put your willpower to the side and say, okay, this doesn't really work right now, so we're going to find you another mode of transportation. We're going to navigate around the truism. Because again, if someone asks you, how do I swim? And you tell them you just have to swim, it doesn't work. Keep the swimming metaphor in mind because we're going to get back to it as much as possible. So the goal here is twofold. We're going to ignore your willpower altogether, but at the same time, paradoxically knowing that if we manage to get you to do that, it's going to strengthen your willpower. How is it possible? Well, it's the swimming metaphor I just used. When you start swimming, you have to rely on floaters. No one, at least it happened to me, but it's because the person who taught me how to swim was a maniac. No one just tosses kids into the deep end and just watches them drown. The guy did. He had like une perche and he would push us down the bottom. I'm pretty sure the guy's in prison now, but long story short, usually you start, if you're a normal kid, you start with floaters in the shallow end and you learn how to swim. And maybe at some point someone holds your legs and you just swim or you crawl to build up the ability. And from that, you become able to swim freely. If you never go through the floater stage, you're never going to become a very strong swimmer for the most part. So we're going to have to treat most people with the same care. We have to start you off with floaters if we want you to be able to be a strong swimmer at some point. And the method for that is that we're going to make sure that you don't have to force anything. Because the second you have to use your willpower to force yourself to do it, you won't do it because you don't have the force to start with. So the laziness in you is going to win. And I'm sure that you've dealt with that situation. I was like that in the past, where you know you have to do something, and then there's a battle in your head between your laziness and the thing you have to do. And 9 times out of 10, the laziness works. I'm sure you've heard that proverb of people who say, oh, there's 2 wolves in you, and the one that wins is the one you feed. Well, you most likely are someone who's been feeding your laziness for 10 years, so now it's fucking massively bulked up and 300 pounds of lean muscle, whereas your willpower is like 100 pounds and can barely curl the pink dumbbells. So when there's a confrontation between the two, who do you think is on a win? The laziness, because every time you accept your laziness and you give up, the laziness gets stronger. You reinforce your own psychological defects. So we have to break that smartly and slowly. We cannot force it. We cannot force it because it won't work. Keep in mind also that most people are what is called struggle adverse. And that's, I say most people, humans. We evolved because, yes, difficulties made us better, but also because we're smart enough to know when it's not worth it to actually face those difficulties. We avoid dangerous things so as to preserve our species. There used to be a balance of the two, of people seeking struggle and dodging struggle. Nowadays, most people are just dodging everything. They don't actually seek out struggle at all, and it's the reason why they are so lazy. So we can't hope that this type of weak human, in reality, which is most of us, is going to be able to employ a strategy as simple as just swim or just do it. We have to open up the options. We have to make sure that we don't rely on the will, because again, if you rely on the will, most of the time, when given said option, you're just going to quit because the laziness is going to win. That is because your default setting is no. When you start training, and you ask yourself, do I want to go to the gym? If the answer that comes to your mind immediately is no, it means that your approach to the entire thing was sabotaged from the get-go. That's what the author tries to get at with his psychological approach. It's not that you're lazy, it's that you have built up mechanisms in your mind that leads to the answer to going to the gym or doing anything hard being no, because it's more comfortable. So instead, you have to convince yourself to go. And how do you do that? Well, we already know that you're not going to be able to do it yourself. You won't be able to self-convince yourself, because when you ask yourself the question, the answer is, I don't want to go to the gym. Now, again, ask yourself this. Do you think it's reliable, or it's a sustainable method to get your ass to the gym to ask yourself every time you want to go, do I want to go? The answer is no. And actually, it goes beyond the gym. I know people who work like this for their job. Mean that every time they wake up, they ask themselves, oh, do I even want to go? Same for school. I used to know people who would skip all the time. Why? They would ask the question as if it were a choice. It is a choice, don't get me wrong. But the second you have that choice in yourself and the answer is no by default, you're going to embrace that answer. I used to know a person, an adult woman, that, I'm not kidding you, skipped one day out of two out of her job because most of the time she would wake up and say, well, I just don't feel like it, so she never did. You don't want to be like that. You don't want to be the type of person that constantly dodges struggle. So the solution is to make it a non-question. You don't want to ask yourself the question. You already know that your lazy ass is going to say no, so don't ask. Don't ask for your own consent. You're going to violate your own consent, which paradoxically also means that it is still aligned with your consent because you're the one doing it. You have to put the lazy part of yourself in a box where he doesn't have a say. We don't listen to that guy. He brings nothing but trouble. He's the reason why you're fat. He's the reason why you don't get gains. It's the reason why you quit lifting every 3 months. It's that dude. So stop taking his advice. Stop asking for his opinion. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create habits via habit formation. You already do that. I mean that it's nothing crazy or revolutionary. It's not an hypnosis trick. You already have formed habits in your life that are unbreakable. For example, you brush your teeth. Why do you brush your teeth? Because you know it's good for you. But you weren't born with the knowledge in your brain that you have to brush your teeth. Your parents taught you that, and then you picked it up from there, and hopefully you do it to conserve a standard dental hygiene. That is a habit that you build via formation. This means that you can build any types of habit. Most habits that humans have are the ones that hinges on our biological needs. Like, for example, you're gonna go take a shit. You didn't have to actually build that habit. It's ingrained in your DNA because it's a vital need. But we go beyond that, right? Animals are stuck with this. We can do more. We can engineer our own habits. So there are tactics to embrace. 4 tactics in reality. Tactics that, at the end of the day, will build up willpower, but at the same time, not relying on willpower at all. Again, it's that paradox I was talking about. And you're going to, in a sense, manipulate your own self through a strategy that people who want to take advantage of you will be using and you will notice in your life. If someone constantly asks favor of you, especially if they're small, they might be trying to actually get your own self to accept the idea that you like them, because it's sort of a bias of the human spirit that if you do something for someone, you're going to start to believe that if you go out of your way to actually get stuff done for them, it must mean that you like them, which is going to open up a path for them to ask for bigger and bigger and bigger favors. Well, good news is you can use the same type of reinforcement on yourself. Every single time you do something, it's going to be in your head the idea, and it's going to start developing the thought that this must be because it's a good thing. So we're going to start developing a habit by this very token. It's the, if I do it, it's because I want to. In a sense, you're going to kid yourself into believing that you're going to the gym or getting stuff done out of your own willingness, when in reality the will has absolutely nothing to do with it. We are just building habits which are going to feed your will. Because we really want to preserve the will. It's a concept that's very important, and I'm glad that the author touched on it. The will is like a reserve. It's not infinite. Your quantity of will and the strength of said will is quantifiable. And it's the reason why when you start, you have almost none, and it's very weak. But the more you do it, the more the reserve grows and the more potent it becomes. The thing is, if you constantly spend it, you're going to be empty tanked all the time and you're never going to get anything done. So we want to preserve it as much as possible, because there will come times where what I'm describing here, these tactics, will not work anymore. And that's when you're going to rely on willpower. That's when the just do it will actually take place. But it's because most of the time you don't work like that. So let us discuss these tactics together. The first one is chaining. Chaining is very simple. You're going to take training, lifting weights, and you're going to pair it with another habit of yours that is already formed. You already have a ton of habits, some of which are negative, some of which are positive. You're going to pick some and you're going to pair them, you're going to chain them with training, because that way it's going to be much easier for you to actually get to lifting. And on top of that, it's going to make it much harder to break. What I mean by this is that if lifting is a standalone habit, it's easy to break because it's by itself. If it's chained with other habits, you're going to find that breaking the chain is now much more complicated because there are several links to the chain. So, for example, let's say you have a reach row and you eat at 2 p.m. What you could be doing is telling yourself, okay, well, every day before eating, I'm going to be lifting. Because eating is already so ingrained in your daily schedule, it's going to make it so much easier to actually get your training done. It might sound stupid, but humans are creatures of habit. Children feed off of schedules, for example, even when they're very, very young. Why? Because I do believe that if we look at evolution, schedules have always been sort of a safety. They've always been sort of a certitude, and humans love nothing more than certitudes. We do not like the uncertain. The issue, if you tell yourself, oh, I'll train whenever, is that's not certain. That's up in the air. So it makes it so much easier to dodge because now there is an anxiety that is actually linked to the idea of lifting. You don't want that. You don't want to link lifting with anything negative in your brain. You want to link it with positive things. Eating is a positive thing. So if you tell yourself that after training comes eating, training is going to be a good thing. Now, it could be many things, a warm bath if you like that, watching your favorite TV show, anything, but it has to be a habit that already exists. Because it's much more easier to create a new habit if there's another one you can chain it with. People who have negative habits know that very well. People who smoke cigarettes tend to pair that with drinking their morning coffee. People who do hard drugs tend to pair it with drinking alcohol. This is what happens when you allow habits to develop in a vicious circle. We want to do the exact opposite. The good thing being that, and I'm not going to expand on that too much, but that you could use lifting to replace another negative habit, because at the end of the day, a habit is a habit. And a rabbit is a rabbit. I just felt like saying that, I don't know why. So that's the cueing part of it. And you will find that cueing absolutely strengthens it. And as I said, it also will strengthen your other positive habits. So it's going to make your life a better existence to live at the end of the day. But you absolutely have to maintain the chain, okay? I'm not fearing the fact you're going to break one of the links. I'm fearing that, or however, that you're going to allow lifting to be separated from the rest of the chain, and then it's standalone, and then it's easy to break. So always chain it, always pair it. Even with something that it sounds inconsequential, it's still good. The second one is pre-commitment. Pre-commitment is the ability to tell yourself that you're going to get something done. Again, remember, certitude, the ability to predict the future. Nothing is more precious to humans than that. If you refuse to do that and you just think, I'll train whenever, you are failing at that first step. Because you have to keep in mind that your decisions require will. A decision taken in the instant requires will because you didn't have enough time to prepare previously, so you're on the spot. And most people, when that happens, become anxious because they're prepared. The thing with lifting is that you have no excuse because you're the person who decides you're going to lift. So you have all of the time in the world to create a pre-commitment, which is going to, again, allow you to not tap into your will because something that is already decided doesn't require you to use your will at all. When you decide that for lunch you're going to use fish, once it's time to eat lunch, you're not going to be like, I wonder what I'm going to eat. You're going to eat fish. It's on the menu. Same thing for lifting. You always have to plan things prior. This is the concept of the absolute schedule. It's the way I live. I have an absolute schedule. I previously create things, I make pre-commitments with my will, where in the instant I say, I will be doing this on that day. When the day comes, there's no question. Me of the past decided that this was a good thing, so we're doing it. I say that all the time. I don't skip days. I never skip days. Why? For a simple reason. I look at my schedule, it's wake up, work, lunch, work, train. Train, it's on the schedule. It's not Do I want to train today? I'm not asking myself the question. Yes, I am training today. It's on the schedule. I will do it. Just like I don't skip waking up, I don't skip my job, I don't skip lunch, I will certainly not be skipping training. That's what an absolute schedule is. You remove yourself from the ability to have options because, as we know, the lazy slob in you will always take the easy way out if given option. You want to actually gag that guy. He doesn't have a say in the entire process. But you have to be careful because if you break the chaining of the habits and pre-commitments, meaning that you don't actually follow through on your own commitments, this is going to strengthen the loser's formula. A lot of people actually end up stuck in very negative cycles of no self-worth and of depression because they cannot even stick to the things that they themselves decided. There's nothing worse than that. If you want to break down your soul on a molecular level, start lying to yourself and start breaking promises you make to your own self. Within 2 weeks, you're going to be the shadow of who you used to be. You're going to be a husk of a man. So you absolutely have to make sure you don't do that. I know that we're going back into truisms, but understand that at some point, if you make commitments and then you don't follow through, there is something lacking in you because we're already doing everything we can to make sure that your willpower is not impacted too much. And if you still fail at that point, you have to take a good hard look at yourself and decide if you actually want to live or not. Because if the answer is no, then this is not going to help you much. But if you actually manage to embrace these habits, we can get you to a point where this won't even be a question anymore. So make sure you never enter the loser's formula. Treat the things I said before as orders. Imagine that it's someone, not even you, someone who ordered you to do these things. Again, I know, sounds strange. I'm all about responsibility of the self, taking decisions for yourself. But when you're that pathetic and miserable, we need to get you out of that dark place. And the only way for that is for you to take orders. Take these orders as if they were absolute, and you will find that at some point, this type of extremity won't be needed anymore. The third tactic we're going to use is going to be the barriers, which is incredibly difficult to pronounce as a French speaker. We are going to reduce excuses to zero. Any single blocker that prevents you from getting stuff done, that you use as an excuse to explain why you didn't go to the gym, we're going to get rid of preemptively to make sure that it's not there anymore. And that can be a myriad of things. Meal prepping, for example, for all of the people who are like, well, I'm going to train, but then I'm hungry and I don't want to actually make my lunch. Meal prep. Meal prepping is super easy to do. It saves you a ton of money and time. It's something that must be done. Programming is the same thing. People who are anxious to go to the gym because they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. There are gazillions of novice programs on this platform. And yes, most of them suck. But it's better than having no programs because right now we're trying to recondition yourself. We're trying to make sure that your mind conditioning is right. So embrace any type of structure because the structure in itself is more important than the nature of the structure at this point in time. Location is important, your ability to know when you're going to be able to go to the gym, with what type of transportation, your schedule. All of these are things that you have to look at to eliminate excuses because if you do that, it's going to allow you to conserve your willpower again. If every single time you want to train, you're faced with a blocker, you now have to remove the blocker before you can get into the gym. So you have to produce efforts before producing efforts. How many of you will actually get that done when you just get started? Almost no one, because you're constantly looking for an excuse to quit. So remove those excuses. We don't want these excuses. The fourth one is reward. It's the least important one, but it's one that touched a chord because I used to do that. So maybe it's going to work for you. What you can do is you can treat yourself like, in a sense, a Pavlov's dog, and you're going to give yourself a reward every single time you do something nice. You're going to positively reinforce your own self. Again, all of this sounds very strange and almost creepy to some level because it's you trying to trick you so that you can do good things so that you don't have to trick yourself anymore. But it does work. I used to do that as well. So you want a reward that is small. Don't go to fucking Burger King every time you actually lift a dumbbell. Connect it to the gym, so it has to be related to lifting. Again, don't go sniff blow just because you did 5 push-ups. And it has to happen immediately after because if not, I guess your reptilian brain is not going to be able to associate the two. Again, that's a little bit Behavioral psychology is a little bit iffy sometimes because it does treat humans as beings that are just as dumb as your regular animal, which they themselves are not that dumb. But we're trying to create connections between synapses in your brain, so I guess anything works. The author actually tells you to grab candy and eat that. I guess that's fine. It's if it's a tiny bit of candy, it's not too bad. It's still linking sugar, which is a bad habit, to lifting, which is a positive habit. So you have to decide for yourself. The way I did it myself is I read mangas. I had mangas I couldn't wait to read, but I told myself, okay, you'll get to read the manga after this set. So I would read one page of the manga during my rest period, then I would close it, do another set, read again, etc. That's the way I did it. If you're the type that wants to read more books, it might be a good thing. But you just have to find the type of reward that is going to work, because we want to work with positive reinforcement. Now, I'm the type of person that if you tell me positive reinforcement, I immediately cringe, because I've seen too many people get ruined by positive reinforcement because they never actually faced any negativity and there was no balance. That being said, I wholeheartedly agree that for a new lifter, trying to do away with at least some level of positivity when you start is not going to work, because most people, and I know that some of you are going to scream out of anger when you hear that, most people don't like lifting. I know that we're addicted, but we're weirdos. The average normie doesn't like lifting. They have to be convinced. So if you don't give them that tiny piece of candy to show them that they've been a good boy or a good girl, it's simply not going to work. If you're like that, it doesn't matter. We're trying to get you to a point where you won't need to be babied like that anymore. So it might be good to embrace it, because if you only rely on negative reinforcement, on telling yourself, you're such a piece of shit, you're a lazy fucking slob, you're a fat ass, you should have done it, chances are it's not gonna work. Again, it's the loser's formula all over again. I know so many people like this who always are self-depreciating, who always tell people, I'm terrible and this and that, but it never leads to their improvement. If anything, they wallow in their own self-pity. It's like they start to develop a taste for it. They start to like, making fun of themselves or feeling sorry about themselves because they get positive attention from others, but also because it still allows them to not get stuff done. So it's still the loser's formula. You don't want to do that. You want to extirpate yourself from that type of swamps, because it doesn't lead to anything good. I know that for a lot of bros, me myself, when we start lifting, we use negative emotions, anger, the fact that you got rejected by a girl. All of that can get you started. I'm not going to lie. The ignition of wrath or any type of negative emotion can be incredibly powerful, right? I'm not saying that negative emotions bad, positive emotions good. No. It's just that you cannot do that forever, because you're eventually going to self-combust. It is not sustainable, take it from me. At some point, you have to find something else. The good thing that we all know is that if you lift for long enough, at some point, the love is going to kick in. You're going to start loving it. And also the endorphins, all of that good shit, is going to make it so that lifting is going to be the means and the end. So at this point, you're good. But keep in mind that 90% of people never make it that far. 90% of people die actually traversing the desert, and they never make it to the promised land. So we want to make sure they actually get there, and positive reinforcement might be the best thing. And the reason why many people don't actually make it through that traveling of the desert is because they go too hard. Novices going hard is the number one reason why novices crash and burn. It's the reason why, if you look at my novice program, it's chill. It's chill. I'm not trying to kill you. It's 3 times a week. It's easy rep ranges. It's not non-stop progressive overload. Why? Because you're just getting started, Bobby. You don't have to go that hard. Most people who go super hard, they do it for 2 months and they quit and they never do it again. What is the point? Again, it's lacking consistency. You don't want to enter the gym as a kamikaze thinking, wow, I'm going to embrace the suck. You won't embrace shit. You don't have the willpower or the fortitude to do that yet. So you're just going to feel terrible about the gym. It's going to, again, create a negative relationship with a hobby that you're supposed to embrace for life. And you're going to crash and burn and do nothing of yourself. That is, again, the loser's formula. Make sure you don't do that. You want to be a winner. So these are all of the things we're going to do to preserve your willpower and, paradoxically, to also develop it. But now that you have the will, what are we supposed to do with it? Because the just do it truism doesn't stop at the fact that it's simply stupid and vapid methodology. It's also the fact that just do it means Just summon the will out of fucking thin air, and after that, know what to do with the will. Just because you have will doesn't mean that you know what to use it for. So, once you have developed that capacity, you have to direct it somewhere because your will is an energy. To use the metaphor of swimming again, just because you know how to swim doesn't mean that you know where to go when you swim, or that you know what to do with the skill of swimming. So we are going to have to get you to actually make a choice. Now you have the will to make a choice. The first thing is going to pick a destination. In your lifting journey, you want to set a specific goal and you want to stick to it because now you have actually a destination to go to. Now, too many people, again, novices, start and they have way too strict of a goal, or it's way too fucking specific, but they've just gotten started. You don't even know what you like yet. You can't be that rigid right off the bat. You can't scope down right off the bat. You want to be broad. What makes you tick? When you start, it might be that you like strength and size. Okay, cool. Embrace both. You will find at some point that you're going to be funneled and more and more and more. So you might start with strength and size, then you're going to be like, okay, size is cool, I like size, but strength is my true calling. And then you're going to find within strength what you like most. Maybe it's going to be powerlifting or strongman, etc., etc. That is when the specialization comes into play. It's afterwards. But at the start, be generalistic. It's the reason why, again, if you look at my novice program, it's general. I'm not trying to force you to be anything. You could do my novice program and say, okay, I think I'm going to be a powerlifter because I leave it open. The reason why I hate many novice programs is because they force people to be a certain way with their training methods, and that, in my opinion, is unacceptable. It's robbing people of their freedom before they can even discover it. And this is when you end up with people who have no destination because they were just put in a plane, direction, who the fuck knows, and then they landed and they don't know what to do. Well, no duh, you didn't know where you were going. So you have to also pick something that you love. For the love of everything that is holy, please ask yourself, introspect, and think, what do I love? What is my calling? What makes me tick? I know so many people who go to the gym doing things they hate, lifts they hate. What is the point? Is there a gun to your mom's head? Is she in the kitchen being held hostage? Are you forced to do this shit? We take time out of our days to do that stuff. It's out of our own volition. Why wouldn't you do something you love? You get to decide. Stop letting other people dictate the way you live your life. Actually be honest with yourself and decide, what do I love? It might be calisthenics. If that's the case, do calisthenics, but don't do anything you don't love because it's impossible to stick with something you don't like. Anyone who tried to do a bullshit college degree they didn't like knows that you will not get that degree because there's no passion there. And it's especially egregious, in my opinion, with something like lifting, which should be personal development. It's for yourself. Keep in mind also that it's going to take time, okay? Both these things is going to take time to find what you love, to find what you want to be specific for. It takes time, and time is not 6 months. It can be a year or 2 years. It's also why I tell people to not rush out of the novice phase. I also highly encourage people to not set deadlines. Deadlines are goal killers. You're going to be like, I want abs in 3 months. You won't get there, or you'll get skinny abs that look like shit, and then you'll give up. Why? Because you have set a goal that is unrealistic. There's a quote that I like from Kierkegaard who said that the man that said either Caesar or nothing will come to the realization that because he cannot be Caesar, he cannot even be himself anymore. Meaning that when you set a goal that is super fucking high, that is 100% guaranteed to fail, what happens when you fail it is that you're going to feel despair because you missed your goal. But guess what? In the making, you also didn't get to a point where you could have become your best self because you banked on something that didn't make any sense through a deadline. No deadlines. You want to be big? All right, you have the rest of your life to be big. You don't have a date at the beach in 2 weeks where you have to show off an amazing physique. Or if you do, you're an idiot. This is a game of patience. If you don't respect that, you'll never get anywhere. You'll just spin your wheels forever and get no results. So make sure you don't do that. Also, don't hyper focus on the goal. It's incredibly important as well. Yes, we like results, but keep in mind one thing. The people that only do work if they get the reward, the carrot, never do anything. They never get anything done because life is not as easy as you doing a good thing and candy is just raining from the skies. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you do all of the good things and nothing happens. Then what? You're gonna give up because, again, the positive reinforcement is not there to make you feel better about what you just did. You have to accept that what you're going to do might not work immediately, which eventually in the long run is going to make it work. So that is for the destination. Incredibly important, the most important thing on that list. Second thing, checkpoints. Once in a while, when you're swimming towards that island, you have to pop your head out of the water and look, am I still swimming towards the island? Am I maybe swimming towards a super tanker? Is there a shark behind me? Check, please check, because if you don't, you're going to be like me, where I trained for years for size, when in reality I was training for strength, and I was getting fatter and fatter because I never actually popped my head out of the water. I never stopped to reassess. That is why checkpoints are so important. Make sure you're still on track. It doesn't take very long, it just takes self-awareness. You have to develop the ability to coldly assess your successes and your failure. You have to be detached. I know it's hard. It's one of the hardest things you can do as a human, to objectively look at yourself and say, okay, I fucked up here, this was good, I need to actually work on this. It's tough because we don't like feeling bad. No one likes when someone critiques us, but most what word can I use here? Most aggravating in a sense, we don't even like to do that to our own self. You need to fix that because that is another part of the loser's formula. To recognize a loser is someone who never accepts faults, who never takes personal responsibility, always pushes the blame on others, and refuses to look at his life objectively. He will always be emotional, he will always get upset if you point out the fact that he fucked up, he will always try to guilt trip you into not doing that, etc., etc. This is not a trait that you want. Because if you are like this, you're going to run into roadblocks times and times again, and you're going to start thinking that they're part of your identity. That's number 3. I'm here to tell you that roadblocks are not who you are. You're not lazy. It's not in your DNA to be lazy. You develop that trait, which also means that it's up to you to get rid of it, but it's only going to happen if you get to the point where you accept the fact that it's your responsibility to get rid of it. Every difficulty in your life is your fault. What does it mean? Is it your fault like you caused it? No, but it's your fault because you're the only one who can react to it. We don't choose what happens to us in life, but we choose how to react to it, and that's the most important part. If you don't do that and you think that whatever happens is just your fate and it was dictated, you've started to believe that it was written in the stars that your life was going to suck, which is the Pygmalion effect, where you're going to start to believe that you are a loser because it was, again, fate. You are just born to be a loser. Do you believe that? If you do, it has nothing to do with who you were born as, it's having to do with who you became. You have developed behavioral symptoms that are linked to the black pill and to the loser's formula when you have started to fall in love with your own misery and you try to justify it as much as possible, which is why you've started to tell yourself that you are a loser. No, you're not a loser, you're just someone who loses. That's different. The second one is much better because you can fix it. Every single problematic behavior we've developed in our life can be solved logically. But logic is the weapon of people who don't spend their time whining about how tough life is and who actually look at things coldly and deal with them. That is the superpower that can be developed if you apply these types of advice. Keep in mind one thing. If we talk about roadblocks again in terms of life events, a planned training session is halfway done. And an identified roadblock is halfway solved. And that is the goddamn truth. If you have a problem and you run away from it, guess what? You'll never fix it. Not because it's impossible to fix, but because you refuse to face it. Same for training. You never get your training done. Why? You never planned it in the first place. How is it supposed to happen if you don't even have the ability yourself to, in the future, say, I will do it then? If you can't even delay willpower for a day or two, then you have no chance at life. And that is when sort of all of the stuff that I already described loops back onto itself because yes, I just told you all the methods you can do that don't pertain to just do it, but at the end of the day, just fucking do it, right? These are the methods, they're there, they don't require willpower. If you're someone who's lazy and cannot get stuff done, this is it, right? You have a laundry list, the person who did that did an actual amazing job, it works. But now you have to actually face the problem. You have to actually identify all of the issues in your life and resolve them as much as possible. If you put all of these things together in order, you'll be able to do that. And just like that, you won't be a lazy slob anymore. You will be a lifter. But that's only if, again, you allow yourself to become one. I understand that someone in the darkness who is trying to get rid of the monsters will not appreciate me telling them, hey, just swing your sword randomly. But if I point at the monsters individually and I say, okay, this is how you kill this one and this one and this one, and at this point, if you don't pick up the sword, well, then you're just a lazy slob, you are a loser, and there is nothing anyone can do for you. Your destiny relies on your own ability to take responsibility. All of the self-help in the world, all of the improvement in the world by other people will amount to nothing if you don't actually want and have the desire to get it done yourself. So the choice is yours. Do you want to be a lazy slob forever, or do you want to actually be a winner? According to Reddit, these are the methods. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.